to Foundations. I'm Barry Rosen, and today's class is to houses, but because we have most of the people in our class are seasoned, have enough background in Vedic astrology that I'm trying to do everything on a deeper level. So we'll be doing kind of an introduction to houses on a very deep level. And for those of you who even understand houses well will learn something new. I am going to, let's see, I'm going to turn off my camera. Okay, so let's see. You're still seeing the yellow placard, and it's moving, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's one day I had a problem with sharing, and since then I'm paranoid that no one's seeing the screen move, but we're good. Okay. So I usually start with some Vedic chanting. Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganapatiya Namaha, Om Ganapatiya Namaha, Om Ganapatiya Namaha, Vakritunda Mahakaya, Suryakoti Samaprapa, Nirvigyam Gurame Deva, Sarvakarishi Sarvada, Dhyana Mulam Guru Murti, Puja Mulam Guru Padam, Mantra Mulam Guru Vakyam, Moksha Mulam Guru Kripa, Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrichoma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvina Vatitamastu Ma Vivishai Vahai Om Shanti 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 Om Aditya Samaye Mangalai Burayacha Guru Shri Krishni Vishara Havikitave Namaha. Honoring the great ones, Lord Krishna, Goddess Saraswati, Veda Vyasa, my spiritual tradition, all my great Jyotish teachers, welcoming Daniela, although this is kind of a narrow picture of you. I'll make it a little wider. Okay, that's a little bit better. Sylvia can't come today. Debbie's here. Julia usually comes. I expect her in a little bit. Michelle usually comes. She's not here yet.
I'm here.
Oh, good, Michelle. Great. Phil usually, I don't know, he's in UK. Maria watches tapes. Bhavna usually watches tapes. Jackie watches tapes. Alice sometimes comes between work sessions, and Raj is here. Raj, I didn't get a picture yet, but we're good. So we're in class 4, which is houses and the evolution of the soul. I usually don't teach houses until Foundations 2, but I just wanted to give us a little bit of an overview because we do have to kind of find a way of combining houses and signs sometimes, because the natural zodiac from Aries to Pisces is the natural 1st through the 12th house. And you should learn that from the very beginning. And so I will emphasize that today a little bit. And then I'm going to talk about the houses. Actually, the way it's kind of a fascinating talk. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. Okay. So you're seeing the white slide now, and I'm going to try to make it bigger. Okay. You're cutting the lawn outside, so it's kind of noisy, so I just close the window. Okay, so the phones are on Do Not Disturb. We're all set. Okay, great. Special thanks to a number of great teachers. Western psychology. I always learn a lot from Western astrologers, including Noel Eastwood and Karen Hanmacher, with some really wonderful books on the houses, and Bruno and Louise Hubner. But I'm very kind of fascinated by the psychology of the houses. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to start out with is the idea of what's called the Kala Purusha, which is for everybody, Aries is the head and Taurus is the neck, and that kind of thing, and Pisces is the feet. So there's this kind of natural, the natural zodiac is very connected to the body, and the human body. And if you study Ayurvedic astrology with me, which I'll start a class in September, it's one of the first things that we learn. So one of the things that reminds us is that the microcosm of our body and the macrocosm of the universe are connected. And that's why the connection between the stars and our body and our emotions, because we're all, we are the universe in a sense. So in a sense, we all have some Aries in us, and we all have some Capricorn in us, because it's just part of the cosmic soul of the universe. And so it's kind of interesting in Ayurvedic astrology, if you have afflictions to the head, like you have headaches, you would look at the first house, which might be Libra rising for Debbie, or, Taurus for Daniela, or something like that. And you also always look at Aries, because Aries is the head for everybody. So when Saturn goes into Aries next June, in June of 2027, for 2.5 years, are we going to have a lot more head afflictions in general, just because Saturn causes pain and it's debilitated in Aries, and Aries is head? I don't know. Are we going to have a lot more head injuries during that time? Well, that's the type of thing you might say in a general article, but something just kind of to remember, that the microcosm is related to the macrocosm. And the same thing like with Virgo. Virgo is the natural sixth sign of the zodiac. And in this fall, we get all the transits going through Virgo, and it usually brings up health challenges for everybody, because Virgo is the natural is a health sixth. Virgo is often connected to health, and the sixth house of the zodiac is naturally connected to health. And same thing when you get everything going through Pisces, which is connected to the 12th house of losses, expenditures, and service. So it's really kind of important to kind of learn the natural zodiac, and there are connections. And what we have to learn from the beginning in Vedic astrology is that even when somebody's asking you about some area like the sixth house, which might be, sixth house is generally health, everyday work issues, discipline to keep a diet and exercise. It's really the essence of the sixth house. You always have to look at their sixth house, but you always have to look at Virgo also, because it's, both are key. So I just wanted you to know from the very beginning that we are the universe, and we are the whole zodiac. So I don't know if you all think that way, but that's how I think. In general, this is kind of, I don't know, we don't need to go over this slide, but I tend to take I mentioned this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, that there are many charts. I always like to think that we're multi-dimensional 3D chessboards. There's the sun chart for profession, the moon chart for our mind and our heart and our mental attitude and our happiness. The rising sign, or the lagna, is more our personality and our physical health. The Aruda lagna, we mentioned, is how people see us. The dasha chart is very important. If you're in a Jupiter period, you have to rotate the whole chart around Jupiter, and then it makes sense for what's going on in your life. And that chart is very important. And we always have to see where the Lord of each chart is located. So whenever we do a chart, we always have to look at multiple positions of the 3D chessboard, and we also have to realize that some people, and I want you to get out of this idea right from the beginning. People always talk about, okay, Debbie thinks Debbie's Libra rising. Well, she is, maybe for her personality and her physiology. But she's got her moon in Sag, and Sag is very important, so we can't ignore that. She's got Sun in Libra, so that's very important. So we always have to remember there's kind of multiple signs that are part of us, and then there from each sign there's going to be different houses that are connected. So this is why Vedic astrology is more like a hologram, and then we think of DNA strands as being these helixes of interwoven strands. And I really we should think that Vedic astrology is a little bit like that. It's not as linear as we would like to think about it. We like to think that it's very linear, but then when you start studying Varga charts and all these other things, you kind of realize that it's this bigger than a 3-day chessboard. It's like the DNA helix. Um, I'm going to remind you that if you haven't taken time to read the Camilla Sutton article, that you need to memorize everything in that article. It's the most important thing for this class and for learning Vedic astrology. You have to just immediately know. I should give you a test on it, so you spend the time and do it. You have to know that if you're Aries rising, that Venus is a Marika planet, which means it causes health problems or death, and that Jupiter and the sun's really the best planet because it owns the 5th house, and Jupiter is the second most important planet, owning the 9th and the 12th house, and Mercury's kind of a bitter enemy, and the moon is actually kind of it's not. Aries have trouble with the moon. They have trouble with relationships and with women, and Mars is debilitated in Cancer. So even though it's a Kendra, and in some ways, the moon likes Mars more than Mars likes the moon. But you really have to kind of put all that stuff on flashcards and really learn it well. So I'm going to encourage you to continue to do that. It's really the most important thing you can do in this class and to learn Jyotish. Um, I, I'm going to go over a couple core rules for house studies. Um, Actually, let me do that a little bit later because I think it might be a little bit out of context. One of the things that you have to learn is what are called the karakas. Karakas is a word for significators, or I don't try not to use a lot of Sanskrit words, but I do like to use the word karaka for some reason. Karakas means significators, and so every house of the zodiac has a significator, and you have to kind of know it because whenever you study the house, you also have to remember to see what's going on with the significator or the karaka. So the first house is naturally connected to the soul, to the ego, to identity, to intelligence. Mars is kind of a secondary karaka because Aries is the first house of the big zodiac. The karaka of the second house, which is connected to family, is Jupiter. The second house is really about people. It's not. It's not really it's a money house, but it's really savings, and it's really about family money. So it's not an income house. And Jupiter is really about family. It's about speech, and it's about our early childhood. One of the karakas is besides Jupiter is Venus, which is another kind of aspect of family. And the sun is connected to the right eye in the second house. The moon is connected to the left eye. So that's good. It's a nice thing to know sometimes. Naturally, Taurus, the natural second sign of the zodiac, is connected to Venus and food and money. So that's why last week we talked about how Taurus is like restaurants and banking and savings. You put money in the bank. So that's my second house. We should always think about savings. Third house, the karaka is Mars. The third house is actually about protecting our territory in some ways. It's about entrepreneurial courage. It's about because it's Gemini, a lot of people say it's connected to writing and communication, which is partially true, but it really misses the mark because Mars is about competition. And when we get to the psychology of the houses, we'll see that it's really about the third house is really almost is about carnal desires. It's really the primary id factor in our mind. And it's also, it has kind of a violent nature too. Third house is not really a happy house. The fourth house, Karaka, is the moon, often connected with vehicles. Mars is a Karaka for landed property, Mercury for early childhood education. But the thing about the fourth house is it's really about the heart, the mind. It's about happiness and how are we happy. It's a what and it's a very important house for happiness. And of course, mother comes in there, and mother is the source of nurturing and all that from the moon. The fifth house is the Karaka is Jupiter. Again, the natural Kala Purusha is Leo or the sun. The fifth house is not. People always say it's children. Well, yes, but it's fifth house is about self, how we express ourselves in the world. It's actually about creativity. It's how we express our creative self in the world. And it's considered actually the most auspicious house in the zodiac, even more so than the ninth house, because um, the fifth house is connected to things that we love to do, sports, and investment is connected to the fifth house, romance. And children is an expression of our creativity. I mean, it's procreativity. So the fifth house is a procreativity and creativity, so to speak. It's the result of manifestation of our creativity and what we enjoy to do most. The sixth house, the Karaka, is Mars and Saturn for illness. So the natural sixth house is Virgo, which is Mercury, service, and health. So the nature of the sixth house, the essence of the sixth house is really the discipline to stay healthy, to do a diet, to do your meditation regularly, to go to work regularly. So it's really about kind of discipline. And if we don't have discipline, then our health suffers. We don't show up at work regularly, and we get fired, and we have enemies at work that kind of destroy our health and things like that. So, sixth house. Um, it's not as bad as some of the as the 12th house, but it can cause problems if it's afflicted. The seventh house is actually people always say it's relationship. It's actually about sexual union. Actually, it's seventh house is about sexual union actually, which is the beginning of marriage really, and Venus is the Karaka for wife and marriage, and Jupiter the Karaka for husband. Natural seventh sign of the zodiac is Libra, which is owned by Venus. Seventh house is also business partnerships and short-term travel. And not short-term travel, medium travel kind of. Eighth house is connected to the Karaka is Saturn for longevity. The eighth house is kind of considered the most feared house because it's kind of where those ugly, unexpected things come out, like divorces and accidents and difficult illnesses and things that kind of come out of nowhere. And that's kind of Saturn. It kind of surprises us to wake us up sometimes. Eighth house. There are positives to the eighth house. Of course, we'll learn that in the secrets of the eighth house too. It can be other people's money from your spouse, and money from inheritance. It can be also other people's money. Natural eighth sign of the zodiac is Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars and Ketu, representing the mystical knowledge of the eighth house and the idea of transcendence. The ninth house, the Karaka is Sun for father and Jupiter for guru. The ninth house represents past life karma, particularly good inherited karma from past lives that particularly comes through your father's lineage. So it's considered it's connected to religion and higher education and college and things too. And public. It has a lot of, of course. The 10th house is, everybody thinks it's career. It's kind of our attitude toward career. It's about the 10th sign of the zodiac, Capricorn, is about status. Capricorns like to be Saturn people actually like to rise in status and to be seen and to be that kind of things. It's being and the sun represents status. Sun gets a strong position in the 10th house because it's seen. If you have sun in the 10th house, you generally do well at work because people see you and appreciate you and usually have a lot of work. 10th house, usually you need a strong 10th house to be an entrepreneur. So everyday work is more 6th house. 10th house, is can be sometimes more with CEOs and entrepreneurial energy, and there are multiple karakas for the 10th house, including Mercury, which is a business planet for profession, and Jupiter is even in there as a karaka for the 10th house, although I didn't write it in, but not kind of unofficially. The 11th house, karaka is also Jupiter. Natural 11th sign of the zodiac is Aquarius, which is co-owned by Saturn and Rahu, which you should have memorized by now, and Uranus in Western astrology. It's connected to groups and networking. It's actually not where we look for income even. When we teach the money karma class, income is actually connected to there are other places where we see income in somebody's chart, but it's not really in the 11th house. And people say that every planet does well in the 11th house, and that's why everybody loves the 11th house. But the lord of the 11th house is a punishing agent, kind of like the 6th lord. So your 11th lord causes problems, even though planets in the 11th house usually prosper. So that's where we get to this idea that we have landlords and tenants, and the owner of the house, which you all have to memorize, is from the beginning. Aries is owned by Mars, Taurus is owned by Venus. You have to know that by heart because you have to immediately look at the chart and see where the Lord is and what's happening to the Lord. And so I encourage you, if you don't know that, this is basic Jyotish. If we don't know that Aquarius is co-ruled by Saturn and Rahu, or that Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, or that Libra is owned by Venus, then we get we have to look things up, and we just can't really function. So definitely take time to memorize all those things from the beginning. Karaka of the 12th house, its natural 12th sign of the zodiac is Pisces. So Jupiter is kind of there in the background. Saturn is a karaka of the 12th house because it's connected to loss and to moksha. And Ketu is the secondary karaka of the 12th house. And Ketu is about moksha. The 12th house is always about surrender and letting go. It's kind of sometimes fear. The beautiful side of the self house, the Indian culture really likes the 12th house. It's about service. If our life is really not about accumulating billions of dollars of money, it's about in the afterlife, we're judged about how much we gave to others, and that's how much service we gave, whether as a mother taking care of our children, or taking care of our elderly parents at some point, or just doing service work in the community. So it's the positive side of the 12th house. Okay. Any quick questions on that? You're all unmuted.
I had one in the chat.
Okay, so if you could read it to me, I when I go back and forth with GoToWebinar, sometimes I'm afraid I lose this sharing thing. Why don't you read it to me?
Okay. All right. It says, you said when you were talking about the signs, you were saying Aries has trouble with relationships and trouble with women. So why not with men too? Or is that just when you mention something as trouble with women or X with women, is that just some old-fashioned holdover from the ancient
Right.
Vedic patriarchy?
Yeah. The answer to that is complicated. It's both yes and no because, um, yeah, Aries has trouble with. I mean, I guess Aries women have trouble with relationship, but because the moon, because by nature, women are more connected to the moon and the lunar energy and the feminine energy. The fourth house of Cancer is not as problematic as it is for men. So,
All right.
yeah.
So you're saying it's only Aries women that have trouble with relationships,
No, I'm saying
or
that
Aries
Aries.
in general have problems with women?
I
What
think
about men? If it was an Aries woman, would she have problems with relationships with men too,
yeah.
or
That's
just
what
women?
I what I'm saying is I think that's true, but I think it's a little bit lesser of a problem because again, Mars Mars has a strong masculine energy. Now I know Aries women who have been married 3 or 4 times and they do have trouble with relationships. Um, uh, but whenever we judge anything, we have to look at multiple factors. So if we're judging relationship, we have to look at the fourth house and the seventh house and the 12th house. There's 3 kinds of relationships. There's the relationship of creating a home and a family. There's the sexual union relationship. You may have a live-in partner for sex. 12th house is a devoted relationship where you have relationship for creating children and you're devoted in service to your children growing up. And then, so if we examine anything, some of the things that we're learning are kind of general things. But whenever we're examining something, we have to look at a lot of factors. And when we're studying relationship, we also have to look at the D9 chart in general. So we have to look at Jupiter, which is the karaka for marriage for a woman. So, um, yeah, I made some generalities because they sometimes they're helpful. For example, Geminis have trouble with romance because Venus owns the fifth house and the 12th house. So, it's kind of like six, you get egg rolls. The fifth house, if a planet owns 2 houses, it brings in the other one automatically. So, and then it creates kind of a problem. So, fifth house is children, investments, romance. 12th house is loss, frustration. So, by nature, Gemini's, because Libra owns the fifth and the 12th, there's a kind of it brings in some of the problems. So, Aries, so sometimes Aries, we talk about the quintessential archetypes of Mars and Venus. Johnny Gray wrote that book, Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus. Women Are from Venus. And it's kind of there's this archetypal tension between Mars and Venus, but often there's a lot of passion and it can be very successful. It depends on many factors. Okay. So I'm kind of teaching some generalities, and I did that last week, but eventually we have to kind of get into much deeper work. Okay. That was a long answer, but is that helpful or did I talk too much? I didn't get to the point. So just to answer the question to the point, I think Aries, well, there's a lot of things that you have to look at. I suspect Aries men have more problems with relationship and women than Aries women have with men. Okay, but that's just from experience. Okay, Julia, are we good? Okay, let me move on. So I'm going to go to the section called the psychology of the astrological houses. Um, And I like to think that there are kind of life cycles that come through the houses, and there's actually at some point, if you study with me, They're what are called Rashi dashas. These are dashas based on sign. Rashi means sign. There are sign, and for some of you who've studied with me, there's, there are Aries periods and there are Taurus periods and there are Gemini periods, and you actually go through them in certain orders. So sometimes, to me, what's kind of fascinating when we studied what's called Chara Dasha or some of these Rashi Dashas, when you go through the signs of the zodiac, you're kind of enlivening these certain psychological patterns of development. Okay. And I'll explain that a little bit more in detail. Okay. So, call it houses and lifestyle. So the houses represent our movement through the external world and our awareness of the environment. So, in the sequence, is um, in the Rashi Dasha, sometimes you can go clockwise and sometimes you can go counterclockwise. I'm not going to go into that now, but depending on what sign you were born into, you might go through the zodiac. If you're Aries rising, you might start in Aries and then go Taurus, that kind of thing. Or certain rising signs go backwards, so you might go Pisces. But anyway, this is kind of interesting, um, kind of movement. Anyway, this is kind of advanced. So let me just get to the basic ideas. You know what I'm talking about. All signs of the zodiac represent the path of life and the collective life process. So the first step is of the life process is Aries or the first house. Again, they're equivalent. We always have to look at both. The first step of ego rising out of being and manifesting, it symbolizes moving out, creating, beginning, and moving from the inside. Development of the self, the ego, the sense of I, ambition, and competitive spirit that rises out of discovery, what's part of our early youth to create a mark on the world with sports competition. The Aries phase is about learning that we are an individual on this planet with setbacks and recoveries, learning the setbacks and limitations of life, and learning self-trust and creativity to develop integrity and conviction. The first house represents how we assert ourselves and how we impact the world around us. The energy of power and will to exert our existence, often seen in competitive sports. So this tells us a lot more about Aries in the first house, which naturally have this kind of sense of ego and competition, and creativity is an important word here too. I mentioned that Aries are very creativity. The first nakshatra of Aries, which is called Ashvini, 0 to 13 degrees, is kind of where the Big Bang started. So the whole creativity, the whole universe, when it was created, kind of happened in Aries in that Ashvini. And so there's a lot of creative energy. And one of the things that we learn about Aries is that they're very quick. They just do things very quickly. And I have Mars in Aries, and I'm really kind of Aries more than Scorpio. And I'm like, 10 times as fast as most people in getting things done, and people can't understand it. And I just took it naturally because I'm Aries. I've got Mars in Aries, and I'm just quick, so it's that incredible creativity that is part of Aries, and it's part of this Big Bang energy. But the big thing is that, Aries is formation of the ego, who we are. And the first house is who are we? And our life, if we think about the birth cycles, it's also like, in our early life, we form an idea of who we are from our early childhood experience. Taurus, the second house, um, the search for secure forms of existence in the material world. Okay, that's, Taurus is a lot about material stuff. I mean, if you have a lot of Taurus is stuff. It's like if you have a lot of Taurus in your chart, it's kind of like you probably die with a huge collection of things in your house. You like to buy things. You like stuff. My wife has Rahu and Taurus. Before I got married, I could live in one room and move from another part of town in my car. And after I got married and we moved, we had a 27-foot U-Haul, or 27-foot truck to put all the things in. So it's about, Taurus likes to kind of collect material things. Taurus is the desire to own everything, including a partner. So Taurus has this kind of possessive energy, Um, Taurus kind of likes to take the creativity of Aries and manifest it into form and wealth and materiality. So again, we said Taurus is about banking, it's about money, it's about material things. For artists, it's kind of creating material art like um, um, pottery and sculpture, very more and jewelry. Those are kind of more the material side of, painting and music, maybe more Libra. But so that's that creativity of Venus going into the material world. Um, there's a need for security in Taurus, and there's attachment to family. One of the key words for the second house, one of the key words about attachment to family is my family. Now there are people there, you probably meet families that are very kind of family centered, and most families by nature are clan oriented. I'm working to protect my family. My family is everything. There are people that don't move beyond that into the sense of community. The community belongs to me. I want to help my community. I mean, that happens in the 11th house, but with Aquarius. But second house is that clan energy, my family, and that's a big word for Taurus. The need of a child for fun, for joy, for pleasure, and food and cooking. So cooking, along with the moon's exalted in Taurus, is this joy of food and being a foodie. We mentioned that last couple of weeks ago. And the second house is also early childhood, so it's kind of about play. And so there's this Taurus has this kind of, and second house has this kind of childhood play to it. And it's the beginning of family relationships. So we decide who we are as an individual in Aries, and in Taurus, we start moving into developing a relationship with our family, with our siblings, with our parents, and things like that, with our relatives. And you think of your early childhood, it was like you didn't know much other than family, second house, second level of human development. Gemini, third house. Um, so the Gemini is the need to link ideas and step outside the world of materiality. So Gemini is an air sign. So air signs are about communication. The communication is about writing, thinking, categorizing, exploring. And Gemini has that energy. It wants to kind of move out of the world of materiality into the world of thought and thinking and ideas. Um, Thinking types that process the material and observable into order and function and create concepts. So again, we think of academics who observe things in the material world and develop concepts and then create theories in their mind. Think of Newton seeing the apple fall and then developing the laws of gravity. Um, Third house requires contact with many neighbors to develop the move beyond traditional frame of reference in the family. So third house is actually neighbors also. And it's like moving into the neighborhood. I remember when I was a Cub Scout, we had a chapter in our book about, know your neighborhood, know your neighbors, know your neighborhood is about moving beyond the family into the neighborhood. And sometimes a lot of people have troubles with neighbors. They move into a neighborhood and they end up fighting with their neighborhood because somebody has their tree overhanging their yard and they won't refuse to cut it down. So you get third house kind of conflict. The third house is also it beckons us to explore sexuality and express intimate impulsive drives. Now, the funny thing about the third house, which isn't usually taught in fundamental astrology, is it represents our core sexual drive, kind of that Freudian id energy, the itch to procreate, and we know in serial rapists and people that we don't really appreciate in our society, they don't ever move out of that third house kind of fixation. It's a very kind of core energy, but it's also kind of very primal, and it's also kind of primal anger in the third house. Again, we said it's connected to Mars, and primal anger in the sense is kind of protecting and fighting. And third house is often about siblings. And what do? We develop our individuality by fighting with our siblings. We differentiate ourselves from our siblings so mom will like us better. And we fight with our siblings for mom and dad's love. And so there's this fighting energy in the third house, and it stays there. Actually, I'm bringing up these kind of core things, but they, what happens is we fight with we fight with our neighbors, and we fight with our siblings because of what's going on in our third house, and then we're in our 50s and 60s, and we're still fighting with our neighbors, and we're still fighting with our siblings. So these things keep going, and we don't ever learn the core issues around them, right? Cancer, the fourth house, the need to promote and provide emotional security for oneself and for others in building homes, nesting, finding safety. So Cancer's the crab, and the crab likes to feel protected and kind of pull into an area so that it doesn't feel vulnerable. And creating a home and nesting, is a very kind of core emotional safety issue that we all have. And the fourth house is about that, creating security for ourselves. Do we want to move into a secure neighborhood where we don't have a lot of crime, because it's a primal issue to feel safe in the fourth house. Um, then the fourth house then also becomes about creating a family life, and it's a marriage house because it's about creating a family, creating a home, and it becomes a core house in marriage and family life. It's not just the seventh house of copulation; it's the fourth house of creating a family, a sense of belonging. It's a place of mothering, and the need to nurture others. It's a place of moving into the emotional, watery world. Um, the fourth house is a water sign, as is the sign of Cancer, the fourth house of the zodiac. So it's a place where we move into the emotional world of um, love and connection and emotional connection. And you put Saturn in Cancer, or you put the moon conjected to Saturn, that emotion of love and connection gets blocked. You put Venus with the moon or Venus in Cancer, you get you get a emotional connection between love and the fourth house of emotion. And the fourth house is about the need to create a family. We get married because we want to create a family, so that's the fourth house also. Um, the fifth house, which is also Leo. So Leo is the need to be appreciated and to feel a sense of self-worth, to shine, to express one's creative talent. So I think the word shine is very important. We like to be seen. Leos like to be seen. They like to be seen on stage. They like to be acknowledged for being seen at work. The sun, Leos like to get raises. They like to be acknowledged that they did something good. Our life is about gaining recognition. So sometimes it's kind of a core level. There's a problem with it eventually, but there's an innate drive in our life for being seen, being recognized, and actors, which is connected to the fifth house of the is very about being seen and getting the applause at the end of a production. That getting that appreciation. All performing arts are connected to the fifth house. So singers and musicians often have strong fifth houses, and they want to be seen and appreciated. And it's kind of that Leo energy, also the fifth house. The need to make one's mark in the world. That's this whole thing. We all it's kind of a core level thing that starts developing in our 20s and 30s. Like, I want to make a difference, or I want to, there's some people, who don't put Saturn in Leo, or you put Saturn in the fifth house, they just, they end up in drudgery jobs, and they do accounting all day, and they hate it. And they don't, they're not seen. They're not able to make a difference in the world. And that's kind of one of the core issues of the fifth house. Um, when the fifth house gets out of balance, there's bullying and overinflated self-worth, rather than true leadership, which comes in. So Leo, by nature, when the sun is afflicted, it can be too much into power and I am great. Or if it's the king, when it's exalted and the sun's exalted in Aries that we talked about, it's really cares about people, and a good boss at work actually gets in the trenches with his employees to get the work done. Um, the dark side sometimes of the fifth house is the risk of becoming the victim of dreams and delusions of grandeur, and that happens all the time. Sixth house, Leo. Sixth house, Virgo. Again, we want to keep these as being kind of, when I think of them together. So Virgo represents the need for purity. The traditional symbol of Virgo is the Virgin, and the needs to accomplish practical tasks with a high state of efficiency and perfection. Um, Perfection is a key word for Virgo. They just have to get it right, and sometimes they do 4 times as much work because it's not perfect. And I always have to remind Virgos that it's good enough at 80%. Don't kill yourself to get it right. And there's a lot of Virgos. You find a lot of Virgo energy there. Um, Virgo is always about service. Sixth house, positive side of the sixth house is being of service. A lot of nurses and health practitioners are connected to the sixth house because it's being serviced of others in the health field. We find a lot of healers and masseurs connected to Virgo in the sixth house, and something always to remember. Um, Sixth house people in Virgo has to learn vulnerability to see one's own faults. There's a phase of self-perfection and criticalness as a reaction to the ego phase of Leo. So the progression from Leo to Virgo sometimes requires stepping back, and we can be blind in the fifth house, blind ambition, not see how we're showing up. And then in Virgo, we get knocked down a little bit, and we have to remember to kind of be self-critical to change and soften our ego. Libra, the seventh house. The need to be happy, to have fun, and to connect. Uh, when this is overplayed, it leads to suffering. Overindulgence in sexual play leads to illness. Relationship is learning to be peaceful with others. So that's where the kind of peaceful thing comes out. But as I told you earlier, Aries owns the seventh house, and Aries wants to fight. So Libras, unless it has a really good placement and Mars is really placed, they often end up being rather combative. Uh, Libra is into creating conflicting individuals that are inwardly volcanoes. So there's this kind of funny thing about Libras. On some level, they want to harmonize, and the archetype is, the scales and harmonizing, which the scales actually of Libra are actually connected to the merchant and not to the balancing act that kind of gets archetypally misused. Um, but there's this kind of inwardly, Libra sometimes can be extremely volatile. They're very complex, and they're just not. It's a very complex sign. Inwardly, I think that I'm married to a Libra, so I know inward volcano is a very good word. Exploding in anger sometimes. In Libras, the need to move beyond self and separate into partnership, the need to connect. So Libras like to do things together. Now, if you're Aries, like I have a strong Aries with Mars and Aries, the chart lord, I'm a lone wolf. I like to do things myself. I can be all alone and be happy. And my wife wants to do everything together. Let's clean together. Let's cook together. Let's go to this together. Let's go to that together. And I have to to be successful in a relationship, I have to get rid of my Aries ego and say, okay, let's do it together. Libra wants to do it together. And it's kind of a fun thing actually, but it can drive certain people crazy. I had my friend who's a Leo rising, It was married to a Libra, and you know, I mentioned this quality, and she said, "Yeah, oh God, I used to hate that." So ideally, you want to marry another Libra. I mean, I did one compatibility chart, and it was two Libras, and of course, they want to do everything together, and they both want to do everything together, so it's like perfect. But the chances of marrying another Libra is, you know, it doesn't happen that much. I never see it, or they never come to me for compatibility because they're happy because they do everything together. I don't know. Anyway, okay. Scorpio. It's the eighth sign of the zodiac. Um, it's a deeply mystical experience of the transcendent initiation into the spiritual world. So Scorpios kind of get um, bad press as being kind of vindictive and jealous and dark and sexual, and some of those things are true if Mars is really afflicted and in wrong houses, and if there are no saving graces. But um, there's the bright side of Scorpio, and I have that, is being very involved in spirituality, mystical experience, astrology, esoteric things. Um, Scorpio seeks to integrate the experience of Libra and transform it into another depth. Again, the natural eighth sign of the zodiac is divorce, right? So 7 is relationship, 8th is divorce. So when if the relationship energy isn't integrated properly, then the 8th house divorce energy happens with Scorpio. Um, it's about Scorpio is the natural human relationship expanded into sexuality, and so that's the archetype. And Scorpios by nature are very sexual and have to express their sexuality, and it's a very important part of their life lessons. But Scorpios by nature have a very intense desire for emotional connection, and if it gets too over sexualized and does not capture the emotional component, then it gets into problem areas. Scorpios have intense emotional involvement in digging deeper. So Scorpios are Scorpios are very involved in psychology and psychotherapy and in analyzing the psyche. Um, uh, I'm even working in my late years on another master's in transpersonal psychology because I love psychology. I bring it to my astrology practice. I think it's very important. And Scorpios eventually, the really archetypal symbol is the phoenix bird, and who kind of burns in the fire and is transformed. And so it's about transforming the intense fire of emotions and moving into unselfish behavior and pure feeling, sympathy, love, and compassion. So there's a very beautiful side to Scorpio when it gets transformed, and there's a very dark side when it does not. Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the ninth sign of the zodiac. Naturally connects it with higher education, higher ethics and justice, and legal affairs, um, religion, and Sagittarius is ultimately about moving beyond internal, external, emotional world into more abstract synthesis. So once we've mastered our emotional nature, our relationship nature, and our sexual expression, then we can move into a more abstract area of finding God. I always tell people, from the 8th house, where we have the divorce and the sudden accident, we kind of go, why is this happening to me? And we turn to the 9th house, which is God, looking for God and religion and answers and spirituality. So it's a natural outgrowth of the 8th house of suffering, reaching deeply into philosophical religious phases where we can start moving into the social whole of the world. Sagittarius can be a little fanatical. I mentioned that we even have a lot of terrorists that are Sagittarius because it's it can get, when it's afflicted, it can get too little crazy. My brother has Saturn in Sagittarius. He's an Orthodox Jew. Now, he's not totally fanatical like some Orthodox Jews, but he still has, it's all about rules, um, and following every single rule in the Bible, and spending his whole life studying how to study the rules properly. And that's kind of a Saturn and Sagittarius thing, but that's in a sense it's distorting the pure nature of Sagittarius. Sagittarius also is connected to pilgrimages, ninth house, urge to travel and move, explore other cultures, and move outside oneself and experience the world. So, world travelers. The last couple of years, my wife and I have done a lot of world trips to Spain and Ireland and Scotland and Israel and maritime provinces of Canada, and we've taken a lot of tours, and we always meet these amazing people. They're like ninth house people because they love travel and they love exploring other cultures, and they have this kind of, very kind of developed ninth house energy. Put Rahu in the ninth house, and you people obsessed with traveling. I have a friend of mine. He and his wife, for about 30 years, go to twice a year. They go to a foreign country, and then they bring back all these slides, and they share cultures. And it's absolutely amazing to go to their potlucks, and they show their trip to Ireland and Scotland and Italy, and it's just and I have a strong ninth house. I have Lord of the ninth and the first, and I love that ninth house energy of Sagittarius, which is ninth house. It also represents the need to transcend home, family, personal ego, and finding one's place in a greater whole. So, again, in the ninth house, we're moving beyond ego and family and relationship into something bigger, our connection to God and the universe. Capricorn, the 10th house. Um, Capricorn sometimes gets a lot of press. The key word we learned for Capricorn is hard work. It's ruled by Saturn. But the Capricorns make great workers. You're going to hire a Capricorn; they work hard. um, there's a sense of what can do and achieve for the greater society as a whole. So, status, the 10th sign of the zodiac, Capricorn, is a lot about being seen again, by achieving status. Somebody has their mic unmuted. It might be good to mute yourself. Thank you. It's the risk of tying oneself up in rules and regulations for a newfound order of things. So government is very Capricornian. It's all about all the laws we make to protect society, and then the bureaucrats love administering laws, and it's all very Capricorn. Capricorns patiently endure restrictions and rules and frustrations and hard work in order to gain status in society. Okay, Aquarius, 11th house. It's about our connection to humanity and to the larger groups, and to moving beyond our small self as being the center of the universe, and to discovering our connection to fellow men. Whenever you see Aquarius happening in a chart, it can happen in a dasha period, like an Aquarius period, or it can show up in different ways. It can, there's a need for maybe working in the community, being part of community government, doing philanthropic work in the community, something like that. It's about moving beyond yourself into society. Sometimes Rahu is the co-owner of Aquarius, so moving into society is a matter of thinking that we have to destroy what's there and to completely reshape it. At the moment, if you turn on the news, we have the Democratic Socialist of America, who are, they're even saying, well, let's get rid of the Senate, let's let's get rid of the police department. I mean, they're getting they're getting quite out there, but it's this kind of Rahu spirit to kind of change society, and thinking that it's kind of utopian, and thinking you can do something better. And unfortunately, historically, Marxism, socialism, communism have failed dramatically because they've turned into power-mongering institutions. The darker side may lead, and there are actually levels of socialism that have worked. In Israel, they have what are called kibbutzim, which were collective farms that were developed, and everybody benefited from the collective work, and they shared profits, and they all did different things. And maybe there are places where that kind of work. My cousins settled a kibbutz in Israel, kibbutz Nitzanim, that made furniture. And when I've talked to them later in life, they said the whole kibbutz thing kind of eventually fell apart also because of greed and political, rumblings about somebody wasn't getting enough or somebody was working too hard. So it was, but there have been many successful societal achievements, in that system. The darker side of the 11th house in Aquarius is the counterculture, that revolutionary idea of trying to advance society by destruction. And, we saw that with the rise of communism in Russia, and, maybe the Russian oligarch really was needing to be defeated, and what came out of it was something worse. But the intention, was, is there. And Aquarius and Rahu are all about changing outmoded societal values. And so what we need to understand, that's often necessary. And even, our founding country, which has a lot of revolutionary energy to it, and there are a lot of Aquarian energy to it, was rebelling against, the order of the Brits and the unfair taxation and the rule. And often, this is an important part of societal advancement, and Aquarius and Rahu have that role to create it. Pisces in the 12th house. Returning to emotional universality. Again, Pisces is a water sign, and it represents kind of the oneness of the universe in a sense. The ocean is the oneness. The breaking of forms to transcend the world and move beyond boundaries to the boundlessness. So the dark side of Pisces, actually, sometimes people don't know how to transcend through meditation, and they go to alcohol to kind of get drunk in order to kind of transcend their emotions and the boundaries. And that there's a Neptunian dark side to Pisces there, with alcohol and drugs sometimes, and the brighter side sometimes also comes up with ashrams and retreat centers and spirituality that often get into spiritual bypassing. Pisces can get in trouble being too empathetic and getting too caught up in thoughts and feelings of others. So there's this kind of universal energy that comes in Pisces. Movement toward the mystical and devotion, but will devotion lead to fanaticism or pure transcendence? And you get a lot of cults connected to Pisces. We're going to save the world through God, and we're going to start this commune and ashram, and it's going to be wonderful. And sometimes it does work, and I've lived on ashrams, and it's quite amazing. And then sometimes it devolves into politics. Ultimately, Pisces tends to move to the formlessness, back to the unbounded emotional ocean of universal love. Okay. Synthesis of what we're going through here. So one of the things that we have to start looking at eventually later in our studies is the way how our life progresses through these signs of the zodiac. And I'm not going to do that now, but maybe I'll look at that in some of your charts. Okay, let me do a little bit of a break here and try to go back to your charts. Let's see if I can go back here without. Sometimes lately I've had trouble sharing this. Okay, so are we seeing Debbie's chart? No. Yes, no? Somebody?
Yes.
You are seeing Debbie's chart.
Debbie is seeing Debbie's chart.
Okay, great. Okay, I just want to make sure when I share the screen, it's sharing. Okay. So let's just look a little bit, at some of the themes that we've been looking at and maybe see how we might apply them. And also look at the Charadasha, which I don't know if I've looked at with Debbie. Debbie's actually in a Virgo period. And Virgo is, she's got Venus and Jupiter in Virgo, and Mercury is in the second house of family. So, but the interesting thing, Virgo's got two benefics in it, even though Mercury is a little bit fallen. It's the chart lord, and Jupiter is sometimes a little bit difficult. But and Virgo is sixth house, so it's about health and service and things like that. And Mercury's in the second, so it's about healing family things. But the sometimes we try to see where there's kind of a cluster of planets and to see if they're kind of impacting the person. So obviously we have uh, three planets of the ascendant. If we include Neptune, we have Mercury, Neptune, and the Sun, and the ascendant in Libra. So there's a strong Libra emphasis in her life, and sometimes you have a Libra that doesn't have anything in it. So I mean, there is a lot of a strong Libra energy here, and two planets in Scorpio, Saturn and Rahu, and so that gives a natural interest in eighth house matters in astrology. And wherever Rahu is, even though Rahu in the second and Saturn in the second create a lack of family or being the black sheep of the family. I have Rahu in the second. It also may create a craving to create your own family, and it's Rahu in Scorpio, so it does create a sense of desire for spirituality and transcendence and mysticism, and even studying astrology to study oneself. Moon in Sag um, gives a humanitarian heart, philanthropic heart, and connects the moon to Jupiter, and so that's nice. But it is, we'd have to look at the nakshatra, which is Mula, which creates a strong letting go sometimes. Okay. Anything you want to ask, or anything you learned from my talk?
I wanted to ask, how do we know it's a Virgo period for Debbie?
Well, I've got this thing on the side called Charadasha, and I teach this in the Dasha class. And the computer programs do it. If you have Sri Jyotish Star or Jagannath Hora, you can call it Charadasha. You've got to get the settings right to get the accurate years. But I'll show you my chart. It actually perfectly describes my life cycles as I went through. I'm currently in a Capricorn period, but when I look at my life cycles, it's absolutely perfect. I got married in a Taurus period, which is my seventh house. Let me just bring up my chart since I'm talking about it.
For me, I've always used the Vimshara.
Vimshotri.
Far left. Yeah.
Yeah. Vimshotri Dasha is the king of dashas. What we'll learn eventually in the Dasha class is that Vimshotri Dasha is connected to the moon. So it's about how we feel. And so it may be, you can actually predict material things in it, but we actually predict material things much better in Charadasha because it's about signs. It's about, and there's actually 12 Rashi Dashas, or dashas that are connected to signs, and they're kind of, sometimes they reveal things that we may not see just in Vimshotri Dasha. But for beginners, we always start with Vimshotri Dasha. Good. Okay. Let's see, Debbie. Let me see if I think I saved your chart, Michelle. Let me just see if I can have it here. You did save it, but okay. Here's Michelle's chart. She's Cancer rising, moon in the second in Leo. So we learned last week that because the moon is in Leo, she becomes more of a Leo than a Cancer, because wherever the chart lord is, it becomes more dominant. So she's got two planets in Leo, so Leo is more dominant. Now, in terms of Charadasha, because you wanted to know how to figure that out, You're finishing off a Libra period, and you go into a Virgo period in May of 2027. So you're in Leo. So Libra is your fourth house, and so fourth house could be resolving mother issues, a lot of stuff about the home. Um, um, is coming up. Fourth house issues, emotional happiness, things like that, are kind of dominated. And then the way we judge what's going on in the Libra period is, where is the Lord of Libra? Libra is in the seventh house with Jupiter and the Sun. So it's about relationship with husband and guru, and and the Sun being an important planet, family and things like that. So but there's more that we could say about it, but I'm just being very superficial because we haven't taught very much. But just so you know that you're in a Libra period, and Michelle's planets are pretty spread out, but there's a lot of Aries here. Obviously, 3 planets in Aries, and I told you a couple of weeks ago that wherever Jupiter is, it kind of like it accentuates that sign quite a bit, and it makes one very good at Aries related activities. Aries is her 10th house of status and work, and it's got the Sun there for leadership, and nice combination. Venus is not always the best planet there, but because it's Lord of the 11th. I just remember, but nice placement there. Did you end up with kind of supervisory leadership positions when you were working as a nurse?
Not usually.
Not usually. Interesting.
No, it's funny. I know with my son in the 10th, you'd think that, but no, I was not. I did eventually. Yes, I was a boss at some point, but not right away.
Yeah, and it may have been when a cycle kind of came around, and we'd have to look at your D10 chart. But yeah, it had to have happened. I mean, you can't. I mean, you just with chart lord in Leo and Jupiter in Aries and the Sun there. I mean, you can't. Although we did actually. I think we talked about in your Devamsha chart, you got the Sun in Libra, and so what that matters. There might have been some self-esteem issues that prevented you from moving into a leadership position, but eventually, when you were in a leader position, you were a good kind of group leader, because when Sun's in Libra, it can be a good leader in integrating other, but you've got Mars there too, so Mars in Libra is always a little bit problematic. But I don't know. Were you appreciated as a supervisor? Did you have lots of challenges?
I think I wasn't. It's hard to say, but I'm more of a supervisor now. Since I stopped working in my with Art of Living, I teach a lot, and I lead groups, and I do more of that, than I used to as when I was a
That's
nurse.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. That I'm sure we could see that in the D20 chart. Okay. Anything you wanted to ask about real quick?
Well, the other thing with the Chara card, I mean the Chara
Dasha.
Vimshoti. So you said it's related to the moon more, the Chara chart.
Charadash is Vimshotri Dash is related more to the moon. Charadash is related more to the sign. So what we could do, and I'll show you mine in a minute, but actually I don't want to get too digressive, but now I will do some advanced work with you, because you have moon in the second house. The correct dasha for you to use is not it's not the dasha that you think that you're in. You can do that for health, but when I teach this early so people get it right. So when you have the moon in the second and the sixth house, and there's nothing in the ascendant, then we're supposed to use a different calculation of Vimshotri Dasha. It's called Shema Vimshotri Dasha.
Just like
And so that puts you actually in a Mercury period now. Surprise, surprise, ending a Mercury Saturn period. Ending a Mercury Jupiter period, going into Mercury Saturn, going into Mercury K2 and going into K2 period in 2027. So that's a big deal when you go from Mercury to K2. And I know it's going to throw you for a loop for a little bit, but Mercury is in your ninth house. Is your ninth house? It's in Pusha Nakshatra, which is Mercury, which is about. It's been a lot of spiritual studies and spirituality in the Mercury period, and K2 is also about moksha. So it's about moving into even more reclusive energy actually when you go into the K2 period in next year. So anyway, I know that's a surprise, but I like to teach advanced things so that people don't learn advanced stuff enough at the beginning and then they get it all wrong and for years. I mean, I'm talking to people who know Jyotish for years and they miss really important things. And I was the same way. I mean, I just kept studying until I found out that a lot of the stuff that I learned at the beginning was wrong. So I was telling you right at the beginning that your Vimshotri Dasha is actually, you're in a Mercury period, and it'll blow your mind for a little bit, but the regular Vimshotri Dasha does work. It's usually more for health and longevity is that we're supposed to use it. But for timing other things, sometimes we use these specialized calculations.
This makes a lot more sense because like I said, I've been doing a lot of teaching and
right.
Just more mercurial stuff lately. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's been going on a 17-year period. So makes sense. Okay.
But good. The K2, so I'm moving into K2 in 2027. Okay.
That's a big deal. K2 is K2, K2 lets go of things. Family.
Uh-oh.
Yep. So K2 in the second. It's in K2's nakshatra, so a lot of ancestral energy will come out. Healing, a chance to heal ancestral lineage will come out then. Okay, let's look at Daniela's chart, and then we'll look at Julia.
Thank you, Barry.
Okay, so Daniela is a Virgo rising. I was thinking Taurus because your moon was in Taurus. I'm sorry. Daniela's a Virgo rising, and we see a lot of Cancer energy, and we see a lot of Taurus energy, and a lot of Capricorn energy, just because we've got clusters of planets in there. Daniela, did you learn anything new about yourself from my talk?
I'm still taking it in. Yeah. I mean, but some things you said about Virgo rising earlier. Yeah. New things I didn't know.
Okay. Okay. Excuse me. Wrong pipe. Okay. And in Charadasha, which I'm just teaching you from the beginning just because I like my students to be advanced from the beginning. You're in an Aries period. Again, we learned a lot about Aries, and Aries is your 8th house. So what is 8th house? Study of astrology, meditation, money from partnership. And Mars, the Lord of Aries, is exalted in the 10th. So with Rahu. So it's kind of a strong placement. I think if you remember my other classes, Elon Musk has Aries rising with Mars and Rahu and Capricorn, or maybe it's Capricorn. I can't remember. But anyway, it's an your Mars is very, very strong at 28 degrees, but it's Korka, so there's like deep lessons to learn about maybe letting go of ego and being of service and not being the one to shine, and that's kind of a lifelong thing, even though Rahu is kind of wanting that kind of attention. I don't know, but I don't know if any of that makes sense, but I just kind of jumped out at me. Mars in the 5th is again about investment and speculation, and certainly that's an important part of your life at the moment. Anything that you want to share?
Let me see. No, that's it is true that investment speculation I'm really focused on right now. That is true. I can be a little behind the scenes. Maybe that's the Mercury conjunct K2, my chart ruler,
Right.
so.
Yeah. That could be a good thing. I'm just actually trying to think how you integrate the Mars Rahu conjunction, which usually likes to be seen, with the Mercury K2 conjunction, which likes to hide behind the scenes. But it sounds like you've balanced it out. Maybe you've learned the lessons of trying to be the center of attention, and that cause problems. Is that something from childhood that might have happened, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I probably did balance it out because I don't see myself as, kind of being the center of attention or wanting that. But maybe perhaps the Mars Rahu just comes out with more of an obsession about markets and,
Right.
all of that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, Rahu's always obsessed.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Let's move to Julia. I think we've got the right chart here, and I'm sure it's saved. If not, I'm going to get 10 whip noodles here. Okay. So we've got the Virgo rising chart. And okay, in Charadasha, you're in a Scorpio period. Okay, and that is a long period, and it's going to go until 2028, 9 when you go into a Sagittarius period. Scorpio is, the 8th sign of the zodiac, so it is considered, it's interested in esoteric things and meditation and mystical things and astrology and things like that. So that's kind of, and Mars is 8 houses from Scorpio, so it's creating a double energy around interested in the mystical and the meditation and things like that. And so that's kind of nice. And Mars is in the constellation of Mrigashirsa, which is a spiritual seeking nakshatra. So maybe your Scorpio period has initiated, which began in 2018, has initiated more spiritual, mystical, esoteric studies. Is that true?
Yeah.
I think you want me to speak up, Julia. I can hear you a little bit.
Well, I had to dial in on my cell phone.
Okay, you're on your cell phone, so you can't talk. Yeah, we can barely hear you, but it's okay. I think you said yes, so that was good. So Julia has a lot of her planets spread out, but also she also has this big cluster of 3 planets in Capricorn and 2 planets in Cancer. And Capricorn, Saturn, and Capricorn is always about hard work. Okay, somebody's got their sound on. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so anyway, did you again, because you're having trouble with the mic, I'll talk to you. We'll have to talk to you a little bit later about anything that you learned about yourself from my talk, and there's a more second part coming. Okay, so did I get everybody here? Raj, we missed you, so let's pull up your chart. Shoot. I think I hit WhatsApp. I'm gonna make a telephone call here. Okay, everybody can see the screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, so here's Raj, and Raj is here today with us, and she's living in Boston. So Raj is a Scorpio rising with Mars in the first, so strong inclination toward the mystical and spiritual and transcendent and astrological. And her planets are also nicely spread out, which is actually good. It's good to have. It's actually there's a yoga here to have that many planets and so different signs. It's actually good for writing and being a poet even. But I have that one also. So he's got six. The planets are very spread out, so in a sense that gives other kind of a. We don't have a lot of concentration. Raj, is there anything that you learned about yourself from my talk?
I learned the Chara Dasa because
Okay.
that's very new to me.
Okay.
Vimshodri only we follow in India mostly.
Yeah.
Chara is, I think
Yeah, there are
it's
32
very new.
dashas actually, but most people don't
Okay.
use them because they're hard to calculate. But now the computers calculate them. They make them easy.
Okay.
So you're in a Sagittarius period in Charadasha, and that's second house. So that's about family and savings and speaking. And Jupiter's in the 10th house, which is about career and maybe time to reestablish a new career. Having because you've exited your current career. So, that's one way we can look at the focus of the period. Jupiter's in Virgo, moving more toward health and service. Might be something that could come up. I don't know, but we should think about that a little bit. Vimshotri Dasha. You've got
Okay.
planets in the first house. So regular Vimshotri Dasha will work for you, and the one that you know is accurate. So options, I just like to know what periods people are in. So you're in a Saturn period, as you probably know. And Saturn owns the third and the fourth. And it's in the sixth. So, usually lower the third and the sixth would make it difficult if you wanted to start your own business. You might not feel confident enough, or you'd have to work really hard. I don't know if you have any desire to start your own business, but I would think probably not with Saturn in Aries. Saturn's moon. Well, you're going into a Saturn moon period now. In this week, depending how rectified we have your chart. And moon's exalted and it's in Rohini. So it actually might feel a time of happier time of relationships and a happier time of family. Saturn moon by nature is one of the more difficult dashas because it can lead to depression. When we study dashas, it's kind of, we have to see what the two planets mean together. So sometimes, but your moon is very strong because it's exalted. It's in Rohini, and it's got a trine from Jupiter. It's got an opposition from Mars. So, which is the chart lord. So the Saturn moon period actually may feel a little happier, even though Saturn by nature Saturn in Aries just means work is drudgery, and it's very hard to go to an everyday job, which is what you were sharing last week. The Saturn moon may seem a little happier, but you have to avoid, with Saturn moon, you have to just, I don't know if you have any tendency toward depression. Usually moon and Rohini would not. Saturn in transit, you don't.
I try to fight it off.
Oh, you do
Being
have,
a Mars, yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So it's like I have to accept and fight it off all the times.
Okay. So it is a little bit there. So, Saturn in transit is in Pisces, so it has a 60-degree aspect to your natal moon. So that, and it's going retrograde toward the 16-degree mark. So, you are going, the Saturn moon period, you are going to have to just, with moon, you have to drink, Exercise is good for depression. Yoga and meditation are really important. So being disciplined about those things is
Yeah,
important
I
to fight depression. Sometimes
mm,
eating fresh foods helps. There's a lot of prana in. Not everybody can have like fresh juices, and Indian food usually doesn't like fresh foods, but sometimes there's a lot of prana in salad and fresh vegetable juices that combats.
okay. Mm,
Depression is connected to loss of prana, so something to think about. You can try it.
okay. Sure.
Natural remedy there. Okay.
Okay. Sure. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you so much.
Okay. So let's go back. I have some more wonderful slides to share with you. I'm just um, there's this thing called this. I'm teaching you some advanced things at the beginning because I think you don't need to wait 3 years to learn them. There's this thing called Nisarga Kadasha, which is they're kind of like periods of life or life cycles, and different periods of life are governed by different planets. So most of you are older, so it kind of makes sense. Adolescence is governed by Venus. We want to go out and have fun. We want to have sex. We want to get into relationship. We talk about our relationships all the time. That's what Venus periods governs adolescence, and then Jupiter takes over by 32. We should be in be focusing on our family, and then by 50, we're mentors. Either we're grandparents and we're mentoring our grandchildren, or we should be leading others, and that's the natural cycle that happens at between 50 and 70. And then Saturn takes over for everybody after 70, 71. I turned 71 this year. And it's a time where the body starts decaying and you reach elderhood. And elderhood is not appreciated as much in our society anymore, but elders are sages and very important people in our society. And other cultures like Japan and China particularly look up to grandparents and elders more so than in the United States. Taking a class now on spirituality and creativity in the latter half of life, which is about elderhood. And although no one teaches us about being an elder, or what we're supposed to do, or how do we deal with our friends dying, or dealing with our body changing, and or how we're supposed to mentor others in our old age. So it's very interesting. But it's very interesting that Saturn just takes over at 70. So we have to take care of our body after 70. Okay. So I wanted to also show you the movement through the houses, the first and the signs, as we went from Aries to Pisces. It's also a movement of life cycles. So first house is about birth, delivery. The first 6 of our life is about the attachments we have to our parents, and eventually moving outside of the house. It's also thought that so much is formed in the first 6 years of our life. Children need a lot of touch, continual touch and attention in the first 6 years of their life, when psychological studies. And then as we move into the second house, we start learning about our body. We start kind of learning our bodily limitations. We more strongly identify with our family and start, maybe it was just mom and dad, and then maybe we're more connected to other family members as we get older. In the second house, the third house, moving into the neighborhood, communicating, making friends, moving into adolescence. Adolescence is where Mars takes over, and we have a sense of ego. When you look about our destructive youth, going out and causing problems, it's just this kind of Mars energy that happens in the third house, expressing ego, pride, conquest, winning in sports. Adolescence goes through age 18. Fourth house, when people don't get married too much. Sometimes some people get married in the early 20s now, but not as much in our society. But in India, it certainly marriage happens, and it's creating a home and a family happens in the fourth house already. And the fifth house is once you have a home, and you're married, you create children, and or you start venturing into the arts and theater and sports to express your joy, and children are expression of our joy, our creativity, and that's why children are so important to everybody. Another mic muted there. Thank you. Um, Sixth house. It's about discipline of everyday work. Well, part of the sixth house is going to work every day, and how we feel at work, and battling our coworkers, and the discipline of getting to work every day to support our family. Move into the seventh house. Again, if we haven't gotten married by the seventh house, we're kind of moving into marriage and moving beyond loneliness and togetherness. The whole Libra thing. I want to do it together. Um, the eighth house. Is a difficult juncture in our life because it's the realization that there's pain and suffering in life, either through illness or divorce or accidents, that awakens our quest for meaning. As I said, what happens in the eighth house is, if you go into an eighth house dasha or an eighth house chara dasha, if you have malefics in the eighth house, and the eighth house isn't always bad. I have Jupiter in the eighth house. My eighth house period was wonderful, but if you have like Mars and Rahu and Ketu in the eighth house or something, you can have a lot of unexpected challenges, and they kind of, if you haven't woken up to search for God in the ninth house, then the eighth house wakes you up to search for meaning, and why am I suffering, and how do I get out of suffering? And sometimes we turn to religion, sometimes we find a guru, sometimes we start meditation, sometimes we write our first book about our suffering from the eighth house. In the 10th house, the quest for status and recognition, the need to shine. Again, we talked about that with Capricorn, and the quest for being someone and being seen. And the sun likes the 10th house because it likes to be seen at noon. The 11th house, by our 50s and 60s, we're philosophical and sharing our experience with our grandchildren. We're more devoted to acquiring humanitarian experience and wanting to help the world. I live in a community. People are now in their 60s and 70s, but they all came here to save the world and meditate and create world peace. And there's a bunch of old hippies that still are kind of very socially active in changing our society. That's 11th house stuff. 12th house. 12th house is a place of surrender, where we have to surrender to a higher process. Sometimes it's a prolonged illness. Sometimes it's hospitalization. The positive side of the 8th house can be an ashram and retreating from the world and just living at the ashram to achieve moksha and gain freedom from pain and enlightenment. I have a whole lesson on the 12th house on YouTube. I'm giving a talk on it at the United Astrology Conference in Chicago in a couple months. It's an amazing house. People don't understand it and they fear it too much, but it's about service and surrender, and even devoted marriage to raise children is a 12th house experience. Okay. I don't want to go here. You can read this. I'll do a little bit of this now. Sometimes I can go back to the first slides here, which I skipped over because I wanted you to have the background. Okay, so some of you know some Vedic astrology, and I'm just going to go over some important points in how we interpret signs. So first of all, we're spending a lot of time on signs in this class because signs get ignored too much in Vedic astrology, and they're very revealing. There's a difference between having Mars in Cancer and Mars in Capricorn. And there's a difference between Jupiter in Virgo and Jupiter in Gemini. And you have to start understanding the planets and then understanding the signs, and then you can kind of put them together naturally, But So what sign is involved when we're looking at a planet in a sign? What quality does it bring in? And I've given a couple lectures already on hidden qualities of the planets, and really, it's really important to understand the Camilla Sutton thing again and again. Two, what is the house ruler doing? Now, if you, from the beginning, you've got to know Aries is connected to Mars, and Taurus is connected to Venus, and Gemini is connected to Mercury, and even Virgo has a co-rulership with Rahu, um, and Mercury, and sometimes it's the primary ruler. And you have to know Leos are connected to the sun. So I assume all of you have memorized that. If you haven't, put it on flashcards. It's the most important thing to get to decoding. So what's the house ruler doing? Is the house ruler in a good sign? We have to spend a lot of time on that. Is it in a difficult sign? So if the house ruler, I use this example as the idea of landlords and tenants. So every house is owned by a planet. Is the planet, and so the thing we always look at, where's the landlord? If the landlord is in the 12th house in jail or in a foreign country, then he doesn't take very good care of your property. You try to get anything done to get your house fixed, and nothing happens. If the landlord's in the in the first house, he's next door taking care of the property. So we always have to kind of know where the landlord is. Is it in a difficult house like the 6th, 8th, or the 12th house? If he's in a difficult house, he can't take care of the property. If he's in a good house, that's good. Does he have status? Is he with Jupiter? Or is he in exalted? Is he debilitated? So we're always looking what's going on with the house ruler. More advanced, what nakshatra is the planet in? There's a difference between, there's three kinds of Aries. There's the Ashvini part, which they're into healing. The Bharani part is connected to artistic artistic creativity. I find a lot of painters coming out of Bharani, and they're into death and transformation. And Kritika, which is also part of Aries, is connected to leadership. And we get a lot of generals and major warrior figures coming out of Kritika in the Aries. So we have a long way to go to get to studying nakshatras, but no, just so you know, there are three nakshatras in every sign, and there's three kinds of Aries, and they're very different. We're learning basic things about Aries, but there are three kinds of Aries. Does the nakshatra have a benefic or a malefic in it? And that's even kind of advanced. I'm not going to even go there today. I want to use a word, again, I'm teaching you early stuff. It's called dispositor. This is the hidden matrix, and people don't learn this early enough, and I'm going to teach it to you from lesson 4. Some people think they have really good placements, but then they find out that it doesn't work, and this is why, and I'll try to show you some examples of this in a minute, but so let's say you have Lord of the 5th in the 9th house. Now that's a Raj Yoga. That's a very powerful position. But if the 9th Lord is in the 12th house debilitated, then it's like the landlord is in jail and he doesn't have any energy, so he can't really give you the benefits that you thought you had. So we always have to, when we look at house placements, we always have to look at dispositors. So I will pull up my chart to do this so that it's not too abstract. Okay, so well, this is an important example. So Mercury, I have Mercury in Aquarius in the 4th house. Now, not a great placement anyway, but the Lord of Aquarius is coloned by Rahu and Saturn. And Saturn's more important because it's exalted. And Saturn's in the 12th house. So he's kind of in jail, which means he's kind of, you know, when I was younger, I had speech impediments and they sent me to a speech teacher. I was very, I mean, I've written 5 books, but, you know, I struggled through college rhetoric and I didn't think I was good enough. So, you know, there's a connection between confidence and learning abilities with Mercury and Saturn here, and the dispositor of the 4th house where Mercury is in the 12th house. So it's coloring Mercury. Or we could also say I've got the 9th lord, which is the moon, lord of Cancer, in the 1st house, which is very auspicious. It's really good to have, makes me a very spiritual person. But the dispositor is ruled by Mars and Ketu. The dispositor Mars is in the 6th house in Aries. Now, it's kind of a good placement, but it also, you know, it's the 6th house means there's a lot of health issues. So basically the way this is manifested for me is that emotional issues create health problems. So if I don't get my emotions out and I don't express them properly, then I internalize them and it erupts into health problems. But so the dispositor is having an influence on this moon. This is a wonderful placement, Lord of the 9th and the 1st. Spirituality, connection to Guru, love of foreign countries, lots of higher education. All those are true of me. But the dispositor is afflicting the moon here. And so it's creating some problems. Okay. So are you following what I did there? Do you need to see more examples? Let's look at Michelle's chart. Here's a positive example. Michelle's moon is very strong in Leo, likes being as a friend with the sun. And the dispositor, Leo, is in the 9th house, exalted with Jupiter and Venus. So it's with two benefics, and it's exalted. So her moon, I mean, this naturally kind of creates kind of a very positive personality, just because the moon is connected through the nakshatra to Venus. It's connected through the dispositor. So the dispositor is Leo, so it's got an exalted dispositor. You see, and that I'm just wondering. I mean, you have K2 in the 2nd, which usually creates some problems with family or not feeling nurtured by family. But I'm sensing you had a good family, but maybe you felt they weren't there for you.
Yeah, that's true. I had a good family, but I really felt different from my family. And in some ways, I wasn't close to them. I had a wonderful family, but I didn't feel close to them. And in a lot of ways, in some ways, I did.
Yeah, I can see that. See, the K2 always creates a lack. Wherever K2 is, it feels like a lack around family or a lack about being nurtured. And moon is also about nurturing. So, and that can manifest in food problems or not eating in the way you usually food. I have an article in my book about food and family, and usually if you have like a lot of malefics in the 2nd house, you know, like Mars or Rahu or something, like you end up getting involved in alcohol and tobacco and things like that because you can't deal with the emotional pain of your family. But K2 is not, K2 does well and is okay in Leo, but I don't know if you ever developed any eating disorders or emotional eating.
Not disorders, but I was very fussy. I didn't like a lot of food. I didn't like food till I got older.
Yeah, K2. Yeah, K2 is kind of, K2 could do that. Yeah, and that's, you know, food and family and 2nd house go together. Okay, great.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so point 3, what is the house ruler in the D9 chart? So this, I don't want to get into this now. There's a lot of other things that we have to look at, but these are kind of advanced points, but I just wanted to, you can read through them, but whenever we're evaluating planets and houses, there's a lot of things to do. I just wanted to do a little bit I wanted to give you an introduction to houses because they're connected to signs. And so what I want you to take away from this lesson, there's a lot of amazing things in this lesson, and there's an article in my book on it also. I wrote this into an article in the book, but um, I want you just to kind of remember that when you think of the 6th house, you have to think of Virgo. When you think of the 5th house, you have to think of Leo. And you should think about how they're connected. 5th house wants to shine. It wants to shine on stage. Leos want to shine on stage. 6th house wants to be of service. So 6th house is always connected to healing and service. And Virgos are always connected to healing and service, and they become massage. Aries is connected to competition and soldiering and even sales. And so, when we think of Aries in the 1st house, there's the sense of I brought in $20,000 this week for my sales, quota. It's kind of, there's that same kind of energy about ego and accomplishment. And think about sports people. I'm very involved in baseball a little bit at the moment, and baseball is all about ego and perform. Did I get a hit today? Did I not get a hit today? What's my average? What's my self-worth if I can't, so that's Aries. It's, again, Aries is about competition. All the fire signs are very involved in sports and competition. So I want you to just think deeply about the signs and their connection to the houses, and then remember that you always have to they help you understand each other, and sometimes you have to look at both of them to really get an answer about what's going on with the person. Okay? So tell me, you all learned something new today? I wanted to make sure that you weren't bored. I could have created a boring lecture on the 1st house is about the self and the personality and the body, and the 2nd house is about money and family. No, but you see it's all deeper and richer. And you can read about The Secret of the Houses in my book that I gave you, and you should continue studying that, and also keep reading about the signs. As we continue now, we're going to start going through the planets or the signs of the zodiac in great detail. Well, we'll study 2 signs of the zodiac each lesson. We'll study the planet connecting to them in more detail, and we'll have some individual lessons on Saturn. We'll have a whole lesson on Saturn. We have a whole lesson on the moon, and the whole lesson on the sun because they're so important. We'll have a whole lesson on Rahu and Ketu also. So some fun things coming up. And
Gary, which book are you referring to with the article?
Secret Signs of Life from the Zodiac.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. That you should be reading. That's my core fundamental book. You should be reading that, in your spare time, and it's very connected to, the lessons that we're having. And this lesson on Secret of the House I think is in the Blind Spots book. But if you want to go into more deeply into it, if you like reading it, I believe it's in there. Or it's at the end of the section on Secret of the Houses in the Signs of the Zodiac book. It probably is in both books if I remember. Okay. Other reactions? Anything? Closing statements? Closing comments?
Thank you. I learned.
Good, Debbie. Good to hear from you. Have fun in.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a great day today. I mean, more different type of dasha is a good new thing.
Good to know. Yeah, I like to teach new things. So some of you I'll see in tomorrow's financial astrology class. So hopefully if you haven't had time to listen to the tape I sent on the stock market, you can review that before we get to tomorrow. Those of you in the Varga class, we'll have a lesson. I'm not even sure on what yet on Saturday, but fun things ahead for studies with Barry Rosen. So I'm going to stop the